As disturbing as what I'm about to tell you is, I promise you, it's absolutely the truth. I've seen things that I can hardly believe, and I want to leave this one last record of what has happened to me, since I don't know how much longer I'll survive in a state in which I'm capable of intelligent thought. My name is Giuseppe Bertolini. I'm an amateur historian from Italy with a keen interest in ancient Roman history and archaeology, or at least I was until the events I'm about to describe. For the past 5 years, I've been fascinated by an account from Book 6 of the Aeneid, an ancient Roman epic poem written in Latin by the poet Virgil between 29 and 19 BC. In that poem, Virgil gives a fascinating description of a supposed entrance to the Underworld, which he claims can be found in a certain ancient cave located at the crater of Avernus, in the Italian region of Campania, just west of the city of Naples. This cave is known today as Antro della Sibilla, which means the Cave of the Sibyl in Italian, because Virgil also describes the cave as the abode of the Cumanian Sibyl. The Cave of the Sibyl was first excavated in 1932 by the Italian archaeologist Amedeo Mari. It is believed by most archaeologists to be the same cave described by Virgil in Book 6 of the Aeneid. Even though it describes this cave as having housed an entrance to the underworld, archaeologists have never found any such entrance. I was determined to find the entrance to the underworld described by Virgil, and so after years of researching it, last year around mid-October, I recruited my friend Bruno to help me and we went to Avernus. We snuck into the Cave of the Sibyl late at night after midnight, and we searched the interior of the cave, looking for anything that might possibly hint at the existence of another tunnel or opening. We found nothing at first, just as the archaeologist who had excavated the cave found nothing. And then when we were just about to leave, an idea occurred to me. In the Aeneid, Virgil describes specific rites that must be performed to open the entrance to the underworld. I'm betting the archaeologist who excavated this cave didn't try any of those rites. If we want to find the entrance, we're going to have to fulfill those rites ourselves, I said. Bruno and I left the cave. We came back the next night with all the materials that we needed to perform the ritual to open the door to the underworld. We tried to follow the rites as described in the Aeneid, as exactly as possible. Unfortunately, Virgil's description called for sacrifices of 4 calves with black backs, a lamb with black fleece, a barren heifer, and several bulls. Obviously, we didn't have all those animals to sacrifice, and so we substituted beef and lamb and assumed those would hopefully work just as good. We poured libations of wine and made sacrifices of beef and lamb to the goddesses Hecate, Nox, Terra, and Proserpina. We set up makeshift altars to Pluto, the wealthy one, ruler of the dead, and sacrificed some beef to him. Virgil's description is a bit vague in places, so we filled in the rites as best as we could, using our knowledge of ancient Roman religion. When we were finished, nothing happened. Well, that was a waste of some good wine and some good meat, Bruno muttered, disappointed. We waited for a few more minutes and still, nothing happened. And then suddenly, the earth shook. Bruno and I dove to the corners of the cave, huddling up on the ground with our hands covering the back of our heads, hoping to high heaven that the cave wouldn't collapse on us. Thankfully, it was only a small earthquake, of the sort that is fairly common in southern Italy. When the earthquake was over, we stood up and we saw that a carved tunnel with a trapezoidal entrance had opened up in the wall of the cave. We both approached the entrance of the tunnel, gazing on in astonishment at the sight before our eyes, not quite believing what we were seeing. Together, we stepped into the tunnel, It was unbearably hot and filled with volcanic fumes. Porca miseria, Bruno gasped, coughing. I shined my flashlight deeper into the tunnel. I could see that it led deeper into the earth. As far as I could see, the tunnel was large enough for both of us to walk upright. I began to walk deeper into the tunnel. "Are you sure you want to go further?" asked Bruno. "It's unbelievably hot and it reeks of volcanic gas. I'm not sure this tunnel is safe. Even if the tunnel is safe, this place gives me the creeps. I've been wanting to find this place for years, and I'm going to follow this tunnel to wherever it leads. I want to know the truth. I want to know if there really is an underworld. I want to know if there's really a place we go when we die," I declared. Bruno made an anxious noise. I walked a bit further into the tunnel, and Bruno hesitantly followed after me, shuffling along slowly. "Giuseppe, in the Aeneid, isn't there this whole thing about how you have to take some golden bow with you into the underworld for some kind of protection or something? And if you don't, well, things won't go well for you?" Bruno asked. "Yes, of course," I said, not looking back at him. "But the golden bow doesn't exist. I've searched for it on my own for years. I've given up though. I think it's just a story that Virgil made up." "That's what I would have said about the entrance to the underworld too," Bruno argued. "But here we are. Maybe we should hold up on exploring this tunnel and look for the bow first instead." "I'm sure we'll be fine," I insisted. I was eager to see where the tunnel led, and in my eagerness, I forgot the value of caution. I sincerely wish that I had listened to Bruno. Maybe if I had listened to him, I would have been protected and I wouldn't have to see what I ended up seeing. Maybe if I had listened to him, I wouldn't have been infected by the thing that infected me. In any case, at that point, Bruno told me that he was going to go back to the Cave of the Sibyl and wait for me outside at the entrance of the tunnel. I told him that I would tell him everything I saw when I got back out. And with that, he turned and began heading back while I continued heading deeper into the tunnel. I can't express how burning hot it was in that tunnel. Imagine the hottest summer day that you've ever experienced, with the sun blazing down on you. That's about how hot it felt, and on top of the heat, the air was thick with the stench of sulfur. I knew that I was definitely breathing in far more volcanic gas than was healthy for me, but I pressed on. I had searched for this tunnel for years and now I had finally found it. I had had to make sacrifices to open the entrance, but now I was at last exploring the very tunnel that I had been seeking. I wasn't about to give up and turn back now, just because it was a little unpleasant. I desperately wanted to know what lay at the end of that tunnel. I wanted to know if this was really the tunnel described by Virgil in the Aeneid, leading to the Underworld. The darkness was so thick that it seemed almost as suffocating as the volcanic fumes. My flashlight could barely penetrate the gloom. Outside its faint light, all I could see was pitch blackness. It was dead silent as I journeyed deeper and deeper into the tunnel, wondering when and where the tunnel would end. Even though I was excited, I was starting to get really scared. I had no idea where this tunnel would lead, and if it really did lead to the Underworld as the legend said, I had no idea what to expect when I got there. As I was walking, I heard a faint, eerie sound that sounded almost like the sound of voices singing. Those voices didn't sound quite human though. There was certainly a human quality to them, but they sounded wrong. I couldn't place my finger on it, but there was something off about the voices and it just wasn't right. They sounded a bit like human voices would if you ran them through some kind of weird distortion filter. And then I came to an S-bend in the tunnel and I saw before me an underground river. Lying on the bank nearest to me, I saw a small wooden rowboat. I knelt down with my flashlight to examine it. I could tell that it was extremely old, but it seemed sturdy. I climbed into the rowboat and I pushed off the shore. I slowly began rowing. There wasn't much of a current and the water didn't seem to be very deep, but I was still almost petrified with fear that the boat might tip over. I could tell the waters underneath the boat were boiling in some places, and I didn't want to get burned to death in the scalding waters. As I rowed, I heard the strange, human-like voices growing louder. They weren't singing in any human language that I knew of. It definitely wasn't English, or Italian, or Latin, or even Greek. As I listened, I realized just how sad the voices sounded. They were singing a soft, sad melody. It was the most beautiful, most terrifying thing that I'd ever heard in my life. Even now, I can still hear those voices as clearly as ever. There was something otherworldly about that song. There is a sort of bleak inevitability about it. In that moment, I suddenly realized that I was hearing the voices of the dead. Finally, the boat reached the other side of the stream. I climbed out of the boat. When I set my foot on the bank, I heard a loud crunch. I looked down with my flashlight and I saw the ground was completely covered in bits and pieces of skeletons. There were bones from humans and all kinds of animals. I walked over the bones, heading deeper into the cavern. In addition to the smell of the volcanic fumes, another, and even worse stench filled the air. The stench of death. It was so pungent, I couldn't believe I hadn't been able to smell it all the way back in the entrance. I assumed the volcanic fumes must have covered it up. Imagine the scent of 1,000 bodies decomposing in a blistering hot cave underground. That's pretty much exactly what it smelled like. It was horrendous. I could hardly stand the smell of it. Only through sheer willpower and determination was I able to keep going. As I journeyed deeper into the cave, I discovered that some of the bones I was seeing had bits of flesh still clinging to them. And then, still seeing only by the light of my flashlight, I started noticing whole bodies of humans and animals lying partially decomposed all around. That certainly explained the horrible stench. I was still hearing the voices singing. I couldn't tell where they were coming from. They seemed to be coming from all around me, almost as though I was surrounded. Suddenly, I heard something strange amidst the sound of the chorus of eerie and disembodied voices. I heard something moving in the darkness not too far away. I remember thinking it was sort of a scuttling noise. At first, I thought it might be a rat or something that was somehow living down there in the darkness amidst the bones and corpses. But that was when I saw it. The dim light of my flashlight fell upon it. It was moving. I could barely make it out, but I instantly realized what it was. It definitely wasn't a rat. In that moment, everything I knew changed. In that moment, I found out what happens to us when we die. I found out what we turn into. Even just thinking about that thing that I saw, that awful, hideous thing, a degradation of all it means to be human, still makes me go a little mad inside. I can't help thinking, dear God, have mercy. I don't want to turn into one of those things. I would give anything not to become one of those. And then I felt something brush up against my leg. I didn't look. I couldn't bear to look. I already knew what I would see down there waiting for me. I honestly barely even remember how I got out of that tunnel. In that moment, I was so stricken with pure, unbridled terror, unlike any terror that anyone had ever experienced on Earth, that I just ran. I ran like mad. When I made it to the stream, I paddled the boat across as fast as I could, splashing scalding water everywhere as I did so. When I made it to the other side, I ran up the tunnel as fast as I could. By the time I made it out, I was completely delirious from thirst and exhaustion. It was morning by that point, and the sun was shining through the nearest opening in the cave. Bruno was right outside the entrance to the tunnel, waiting for me. "Bruno, it's down there! Dear God, no!" I sputtered, hyperventilating, drenched in sweat and reeking with the stench of death. "Easy there, easy," he comforted me. "You were down there a really long time. What did you see?" "I saw death. I saw it," I stammered, tears flooding down my face as I collapsed into his arms. "Calm down, man," he told me. "You're safe now. You're out. Whatever's down there can't hurt you." I knew that he was wrong. The things I had seen down there, they're coming for us all eventually. They are what we'll all become. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, you'll become one of those things. One of those awful, hideous, rotting things. It took me 3 whole weeks to recover before I could speak coherently again. I've never fully recovered though. What I saw in that cavern completely changed me, and it'll haunt me forever. I feel something inside of me every day. Something dark, something dead, something growing. I now realize that when I left that cave, I brought a piece of something back with me. The Underworld infected me. There's a large patch of skin on my leg that's already dead. The flesh has already begun to rot. It smells just like that cave. Insects have taken a liking to it. I think it may have maggots. Every day, the patch of dead, rotting skin seems to spread. I don't know how soon it'll happen, but I know the infection of death will eventually consume me. It might be a few years. It might be a few decades. All I know is that eventually, I will become a living corpse. What is going to happen to me is truly a fate worse than death. All I can say to the rest of you is this: Memento Mori.